One of the big things, so I came across you on YouTube Shorts. You're kind of popping off on the live stream there, and I watched through, probably the past 30 minutes. I've been a lifelong progressive, and I feel like a big issue. I agree with probably 85% of the standard Democratic policies. But the big thing is conservatives don't vote off of logic. They'll claim they do. They'll vote on economy. They say they claim on, oh, I'm voting on it, but they don't even know how it works. Much I don't know how it works. Even economists don't know how it works, and yet they assume they have this total understanding, and they think that their Trump daddy does too. However, I did vote for Trump in 2024, despite not agreeing with anything. I think he's a garbage person, but it's because of how the Democratic Party treats people in general. If you go up, in my opinion, I think this is why the Democratic Party lost and will continue to lose until at least some of this gets sorted out, is the fact that they treat people very hostilely. And I am talking about the far left, and I'm talking about online. In real life, it is much, much more different, but online's kind of becoming our new life. And they treat people very hostilely. I don't know what the word
Do you
is.
think MAGA
If you
doesn't do that? Do you think they treat people like in a welcoming way?
No, but what I mean is in their own in group. The people, if you claim yourself to be conservative and you still have like one or two beliefs that are off, if I believe in like most of your things, but there was like say I'm actually pro-choice, most conservatives are not willing to exile me over that. But if I'm in a liberal, even in a friend group in real life, and I'm a super pro-life person, but all of my other beliefs are liberal or left-leaning, the hostility is much stronger from the left side. I think that's really
Yeah,
going to damage them.
but that's largely because we had Donald Trump go back and forth on like trans bathroom bills like 20 times in the past 8 years if he supports them or not, and on abortion and on a bunch of different topics. Republicans care about power over everything, and their only identity they care about is nationalism and being able to control like power and government. And meanwhile, Democrats are obsessed with like 5,000 different identities, and they need to juggle all of these identities and make it work. And I do think things like cancel culture went too far, and I do think um, Democrats have been too antagonistic towards white men, straight white men in general. But I don't think there's any rational ground at all to go from like a Biden to a Trump voter. I mean, I would understand more so if it was like a Biden to a protest vote or a Biden to a, I don't know, a third party. But going Biden to Trump usually shows me that a lot of your politics, and you're kind of saying that, it's based off of what your vibes are at the time, not really the direct policy. You said you agree with Democrats more on policy, but you don't like how they treat people. So there's something you've seen happening culturally that you're not happy with Democrats. I'd assume is the main
Yeah, well,
issue.
and that is well, I didn't have an issue with Harris at all. A lot of
Okay.
people were a lot of these like conservative talking heads were claiming she was the devil. I really didn't have an issue with her. I thought she was a very run of the mill, safe politician choice. Um, I understand, like some people say, oh, like she never talks about policies, and I get why they say it is because she's very traditional politician, and they're not used to that. They're used to a dude saying very clearly what he wants and yelling it basically. But
I'm
I
kind of
didn't have an issue with
confused.
Harris.
I'm kind of confused how you came in because you said that Republicans don't vote off of policy, but you just said that you also did not really vote off of policy. So what did you vote for Trump for? Like, what was your main reason for voting him?
Because I want the Democratic Party to lose, and I mean
Okay,
that
you wanted to
in
punish
let me
the Democratic Party. Are you coming from like
yeah.
just so I get an idea of this? Are you coming from a like Green Party accelerationist perspective where you're like far left? Are you just like a all over the place and you just want Democrats to improve? Are you having this idea of just like if things get worse, Democrats will be forced to improve? Like where are you coming from?
Yes, well, that last one is exactly it. No, I wouldn't say I was far left. I was maybe slightly. I'd say I was fairly moderately left. My big thing that I disagree with on the Democratic Party is the trans issue, and we don't have to get into that. That's my personal one. But on almost every other liberal point, I agree with. But I think that the way that they're running, the way that they keep pushing themselves, the Democratic Party, they will get to a point where everyone is so sick of our Democratic Party that they don't want to vote off of it, because I don't think anyone, or very, very few people, actually vote off of true policy and
Well,
logic.
let me say this real quick, just off of what you're saying, because so right now, Donald Trump, any American president who barely survived the assassination attempt would have won by 10 points in the election. And also, we know that every incumbent globally benefited greatly from inflation because, or no, did not benefit. They got hurt from inflation. So any incumbent got blamed for inflation, even if it wasn't their fault. So Trump got the benefit of the inflation being blamed on Biden and Harris, and also the assassination attempt helped boost his approval ratings. And Elon Musk buying Twitter and also donating so much money to the campaign helped out a lot as well. And even with all of that, he did barely beat Harris. It wasn't like a blowout election. So I would just say, like, I I understand. I think Democrats need to be more power driven and more symbolic in certain ways. But this election also was extremely like down to the wire. Those votes in those swing states, and also just the popular vote in general. Harris probably outperformed what she should have performed nationwide. But as far as Democrats in general, and I would love to talk about the trans issue. I always love talking about trans issues. They performed fine in the House. Like Democrats and their House numbers were completely fine. The only places where they really lost were the Senate, which the Senate is just institutionally against Democrats in the same way the Electoral College is, because the Senate, I'm pretty sure the Democratic senators usually represent like 30 or 40 million more people than the Republicans do, because the Republicans have a bunch of small states with 2 senators. So Democrats did pretty good in the House. So I don't really know how much is really attributed to trans people or like cultural policy. I agree there's things they need to refine around the edges, but there's nothing they do that any sane person, and I do think there's a propaganda wave sweeping over the nation as well, but there's nothing any sane person would look at the Trump campaign and Harris campaign and think like, oh, the Harris campaign, and you already said you want to blame Democrats, so I'm not saying you think Trump is better, because obviously your goal is to blame, like to, put Democrats in a place where they need to reevaluate and fix their strategy, which is something I'm against. But
I mean, yeah, I
there's
do
nothing
agree with
where
you.
let's say you're not you. Any voter that looks at both campaigns and Trump calls liberals vermin, disgusting animals, immigrants are poisoning the blood of America and spreading their terrible genetics into our genetic pool and all that kind of stuff. And then Joe Biden says in response to the comedian, if you think Puerto Rico is an island of garbage, then I think anyone who's a supporter is garbage. And then Republicans go crazy and dress in garbage bags on Halloween. So I
Yeah,
think we're seeing also like, I think we're also seeing a response to the woke, so quote unquote woke like SJW culture. We're seeing the anti SJWs, and I'm seeing right wingers looking for
I agree.
reactions, and I'm
I
seeing
agree.
like them act in an extremely sensitive manner. I was reacting to Joe Rogan earlier, and he was just like crying about things, like unironically whining about the world and how he wants to just vibe and not think about how hard the world is. And it's like, I feel like if did you see the clip of like Harris when she said you can go to the smaller rally down the street?
No, I didn't see that. No.
So there was a group of like MAGA, like younger MAGA supporters, a bunch of these guys that were like very religious, and they were yelling at a Harris rally and being very loud. And Harris saw them and saw the MAGA hats and said, "Oh, you guys are at the wrong rally. You must, you should be at the smaller
Oh,
rally down the street."
that's what that
But
was.
yeah,
I
but
did see the misconstrued clip.
yeah, but that was like a huge thing I heard for like an entire month of people saying Harris came after Jesus Christ. I'm like, she
Yeah,
literally just
yeah,
like trash talked the protesters, and that's like an example of the right being super oversensitive,
yeah,
which is like insane to see them do it,
yeah.
because it's like, do you not see the hypocrisy in that?
No,
At least the left,
I
like
agree with these.
at least
I
the left is
I
like overly radically left, and meanwhile they're becoming overly radical, like sympathetic to reevaluating if World War II was a just war or not, or if like Hitler was actually bad or not. It's just like, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, well, that I mean, that claim, that I mean, that's going. I'm sure that there's some out there. I don't know that that's proper to generalize over all of the right.
Tucker
Let me ask you. You
Carlson Tucker
said,
Carlson hosted like a neo-Nazi person who said that Hitler was not really that bad of a guy, and Elon Musk shared the podcast, and Elon Musk is in the White
who
House
was it?
24/7 now. Tucker Carlson, I forgot the guy's name. I could look it up.
Tucker
Um,
Carlson also had a guy that claimed he had fellatio with Obama.
Yeah, but Elon Musk boosted these things and said, "Wow, interesting. This makes sense." When talking about Hitler not being that bad of a guy, so like Elon Musk being directed, like being completely connected to the White House and directing a lot of White House policy, and them even saying that he's going to be like Trump's right hand man the entire time. We'll see how long that lasts, by the way, because
Mhm.
I don't think the egos are going to work well together once it actually
No.
happens. They're in the honeymoon phase right now, where it's not real. Their approval ratings are super high. It's funny because when Trump was in office last, his approval ratings were like the lowest of all time, and now they're the highest they've ever been when people don't have him in charge. So we'll see where that goes. But yeah, just whatever you were gonna talk about
Yeah,
next.
well, I wanted to bring back, because you said that you thought Harris uh, did better than you thought she would. And correct me if I'm wrong. I think my numbers are right in here. Oh, she only did better than Biden in 50 counties in the entire United States. In almost every single county, she had less votes than Biden. I don't think that that is an improvement,
Oh no,
especially with the
but think
names that they're
about the
claiming. You know,
environment
like
though. Like think about what the elections were though. Like Trump got blamed and rightly so, 5% of the world's population, but 20% of COVID deaths. Trump got blamed for COVID. So Biden, that was a huge change election in favor of Biden, and people wanted to get rid of Trump anyway. He was talking about the election denial stuff already. People were happy to get rid of Trump. That's why Biden blew out Trump, even though Biden could barely barely be seen in public, even at that point. But then this election is completely different because there's an inflation crisis that happened, which also probably came from Trump's White House because economic policy takes like 2 years to actually be felt. And now it came down. Obviously, the economy is going to be strong now for when Trump takes office due to a lot of Joe Biden's policies.
mhm.
But Harris had to deal with the weight of the Biden admin. Biden's approval rating is terrible. She had to deal with she was being so like Trump was being blamed for the pandemic. Harris was being blamed for inflation and had to run a 90-day campaign. So when I say she outperformed where she like could have, I'm pretty much saying that if Joe Biden would have stayed in the race, they might have lost New Mexico and they might have lost like New Hampshire. Unironically, like that's what all the polls are pointing towards. And now after seeing how off the polls were already, um, I believe Joe Biden would have lost by even more, like a lot more, and we probably would have lost more House races and Senate races as well if Harris wasn't able to step in a 90-day campaign. So I think considering all those variables, it was a success because of every factor that was influencing these two different elections.
I don't know, man, because I do think that Harris was a better choice than Biden by a long shot. I think it was a significantly smarter choice. Now, I did see you in the last call that you had say that 2012 Biden would have whooped, and yeah, 2012 Biden would have mopped the
Oh
floor with
yeah.
almost anyone.
And Biden would
But
be built for this politics too, because Biden was that guy that would shoot from the hip and talk a little bit like off the cuff, and that's what he got penalized for before. But he would have been like old Biden in like 2008. He would have been built for this political time, like with
sure.
all the yeah, he would have been built for it.
What my point is that I'm bringing is I feel like a lot of the Democratic Party and Democrats, progressives in general, are not understanding the conservative point of view. It's well, and you did get on point of it, because one of their biggest things that, and it's one of those things that are unspoken. So many people are actually like supporters of Trump, and they're like, "Oh, I've been a lifetime time leftist," and that's just like a weird coy way to be like I'm voting for Trump, but I don't want any of the social ramifications that come with it. But and you were talking about how like I think that they've been too aggressive on straight white men, and I think that that is an issue, but I also think that while online, there's so much, like the arguments that you can say are not things that you can say face to face with like your aunt at dinner. And unfortunately, the worst sides get brought up, and so obviously, like the white supremacist, the true fascist, and I don't mean that in like a coy way, but the true fascists on the right come up. But then you also see like these people disowning their entire families, cursing out their grandmas because they voted for Trump, and that creates such a divide where you're like, the Democratic Party is claiming to be this party of morals, but they're also the people saying that men should be eliminated. In some,
They're not
obviously
saying
the
that.
extremes. I'm not saying no. There, I'm not saying all of
If you
them
want to
are,
talk about
but
1%
yes,
of the party, then I'll just
absolutely.
call the entire Republican Party saying that they want to eliminate all races. Like we can go to any extreme you want,
Well,
but
but
like the
no,
truth is
because
that
you're misapplying my logic here.
the radicals of the right are much closer to the center of power in the party than the left, and that's the reason that the left and liberals are denying people who support Trump, because if we talk about issues in America and we talk about what's actually happening, the left perspective you can debate, but the right perspective in America you cannot debate. It's based on 100% or 99% lies when it comes to actual policy and material reality with how the world actually functions and works. So it's hard for people when their grandma's voting for mass deportations and she doesn't even know that Trump wants to do denaturalization for people, and grandma was watching something on Facebook and she thinks they're only going to go after the bad undocumented immigrants. Meanwhile, they're going to go for every undocumented person. And like when someone is voting off of all these false pretenses, I would recommend, if someone's just like completely stuck down a conspiracy rabbit hole, to go away from, if it's too draining for someone, you don't need to have a big breakup with them, but at least don't let them drain your energy. But the things you're seeing is a product of the media environment. You're seeing things that are like the most outlandish versions of these people saying like, oh, I'm not talking to my family member anymore. And they're probably doing it for TikTok views. And they're probably doing it to get shared. So I wouldn't give too much stake into that, because personally for myself, any person that I've seen in real life that has had these conversations is just like, yeah, my uncle watches InfoWars 24/7, so I really just can't talk to him anymore because he's like talking about like I can't drink a certain kind of fluoride water because I'm gonna have a heart attack from myocarditis if I get the vaccine, and my genes are edited now, and I'm gonna turn into a Morpheus. I'm gonna be like morphing into a different animal soon because of the government chemtrails. And it's like, I don't know, like I understand that person cutting that person off from their life, or at least like reducing contact. Because and I agree, it's not good to do. I think the radical examples you're bringing up are not actually happening in any meaningful way. They might be hyped up for social media, but also I do believe many of these people who are very in this universe are being lied to and manipulated by Trump. So it's hard because I don't know how we break that in many of these situations.
Well, the thing is, the whole MAGA community is a cult, and that's why you didn't see Trump's numbers go up in this election. I think is because the people who voted for him in the first election voted for him again, and that really is the way. When I'm talking about the Democratic Party, I'm trying to take an eagle eye view in the future, but when we're talking about the Republican Party lying to their constituents, one, I said I got 2 points here. One, I think that wasn't 100% accurate, what you said about the far right being much more close to the center of power than the left. I don't think that that's accurate. I think that that is pretty false. And then also, yes, there are claims that are exaggerated, but as Democrats, we have to be careful about throwing the baby out with the bathwater. And so when they are making claims of like COVID-19 vaccine damage, you put chemtrails and oh, I can't even remember the other thing that you put. You put a bunch of things, and then you put like myocarditis with a vaccine. And
Yeah.
although that almost never happens, it is a possible side effect.
But
Now, does that happen
the
to?
cases of myocarditis went down when the vaccine was introduced, actually, and that's the crazy part too. Like, it's
Well,
still
I mean,
like, yeah,
I don't doubt that, and I'm not a vaccine. I'm vaxxed up, but what I'm saying is it is a linked side effect, and that's not even, Fauci himself has come out and said it's very, very rare, but it is
yeah.
possible.
But how do I
But if
message
we
on
if
that
we're
to someone who believes it, who believes that
well if
it's going to cause like a really bad health effect because they were watching like a Joe Rogan podcast? How do I get that person to like de-radicalize from from that position?
Well, I'll tell you what makes it worse is if you claim that it's not a concern or not a worry, it's not, or if you claim it's not real, or you put it into all these other things. It's kind of like the old when like the Dare program would come into school and they're like heroin's bad, meth is bad, weed's bad, and they all lump them together. And then you try weed and you're like, oh, that's not bad. And then that's when people were like, oh, these other things must not be as bad as I was told. And so the first
It's
thing
the
that we can
same on the
do
other
as
side, though.
Democrats
Yeah. Okay.
the first thing that we can do as Democrats is just understand, yes, and if we're going to be the party of logic, we have to say, okay, some of these fears are founded. I understand why, but here are the statistical rates, and then you compare them to things that they do on a normal, like compared to driving statistics, how likely they're going to die in a wreck just by
They don't
going to
believe in
work.
stats though. They don't believe in stats. You show them a graph, they just don't care. They really just don't care. They see the graph and they see the x and y axis pointed in an L and they think it says a loser liberal. That's all they see a graph as. Like it really does not, like, they don't read a graph. They don't care about data. They don't care about any of that. They care about their personal experiences and what emotions you can evoke in them. So like I agree with you. I want this approach. I think the Democrats need to do what Trump does, with like the weave, but more logically based. So you have the car. This is an example we're bringing up a lot now, but a car salesman selling cars and being all super boisterous about it. Like, here's an amazing car. I talked to the boss. I got you an amazing deal. I can't believe it. This APR is so low. It's only 20%. Amazing deal. You could drive off today in this car. The car salesman's really good at selling that. But Democrats bring up the Carfax, which is really excruciating detail, and they don't have a good way to message that. So they need a combination where they talk about like logical policy, they stay on message, but also they do it in a way that's entertaining and can evoke emotion and some type of sense of this is a movement and we're pushing against something. There's a greater narrative for what we are doing. And that's the one thing I think Democrats have completely or not completely, but have largely failed on. And Harris tried that a little bit, but I feel like she's being pulled in 50 different directions, trying to be like a Liz Cheney, voter, and also a moderate Dem and center left Dem and progressive Dem. She was trying to be every single voter in America at once. And then she came off as not genuine because she did nothing 100%. And then she's talking about having a Glock randomly, which also does not seem genuine. And like, she still got more votes than Trump got last election, and Trump got 2 million more votes than he got last election. So it's like it was still really close, regardless of all those. Yeah, I don't know. And Harris is not a confident speaker. She's not a good interviewer. Like when she was asked the questions about Biden, she should have been able to say, "Oh well, during Biden's presidency, you don't when you're having an interview, if you're a good politician, you don't need to answer the question directly. Donald Trump has not answered one question directly his entire life. She could literally, if they ask about Bidenomics, she can literally just say." Well, I think it's pretty cool that we expanded Medicare to negotiate drug prices. And by the way, I'm going to expand Medicare to cover at-home costs. And I'm going to make sure we have childcare taken care of. I'm going to make sure we have housing taken care of. Just go off on your tangent. That's what the weave is for Trump. He says a bunch of mumbo jumbo, and then he just like says immigrants suck at the end of every sentence when he says a bunch of like nonsense. Democrats need a version of that where they come back to the same messaging at the end, whether it's, and by the way, Elon Musk is an elite that's working with Trump as a shadow president. We're going to trust bust. We're going to tax the rich. We're going to make sure we're giving, power back to working people. We're going to redistribute that through childcare, paid family medical leave. We're going to do that through expanded Medicare. We're going to get drug prices down more, crack down on pharmaceutical companies that caused the opioid epidemic. That's what Democrats need. They need that policy issue combined with an emotionally charged idea and narrative. And that needs to be their messaging focus moving forward to beat what Trump's doing, because like their strategy didn't completely fail this election. It did not completely fail. But if they drop all the stuff that did not work and they add what I just said, I think they'll be in a good position.